Hey there, food fans. Welcome back to the Food for ThoughtCast with me, your host, Melissa Reagan, and my co-host with the most, Chef Steven Gonzalez. How are you, Steve?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, but I know you're freaking out. One of Steven's culinary idols is here,
together.
Phillip Foss from L Ideas in Chicago. How are you today, Chef?
Humbled, a little embarrassed, but I'm honored to be with you guys, and thank you so much for having me aboard.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't be embarrassed at all. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I have known Steven. We went to culinary school some 20 odd years ago together. And I've heard him talk about you relentlessly over the last 3-4 years. So I'm glad that that we got you on. So
I'm very honored, seriously.
Awesome, man. Awesome.
Well, hey, let's get right into it. So at the top of every single episode, we always ask each other, what was the most amazing thing you ate this week? I want to put Steven in the hot seat and make him go first.
Right. So after coming back from Hawaii, I got turned on to lahine powder. And of course, the locals put it on like fruit. They put it with like snacks, things like that. So I took it a step further and did like a marinade for some chicken wings and made a glaze out of that. And it was pretty good. It's probably like the best wings I've ever had, So lahine chicken wings. Yeah.
Nice. I saw you post the video for that, Steven. It looked incredible.
And it's simple. That's the best part.
Chef Phillip, how about you?
I had a really delicious, I've been on a poke bowl kick lately, trying a lot of them around the city, and I had a delicious one from a restaurant called Enakore, which had like a little avocado mousse at like the bottom of it with tuna, like crispy onions, and obviously good sushi rice and all the condiments. It really was delicious.
That sounds incredible, man. I don't even know, like, I couldn't even tell you what the poke scene in Chicago looks like. Like, that's an interesting thing all in and of itself to me. Not that Chicago doesn't have like a little bit of everything, but
I tend to go on runs where I try like different. I went on a fried shrimp run recently, and just go around town. It gets me out of the house on days off, and gets me acquainted with new places too, which is fun.
I love that. I think it's super like important to be inspired too, right? You just have to see what other people are doing and get inspired and like taste new stuff.
For sure.
Let's see. So I made some spicy peanut noodles this week, but I've been trying just to have a couple of other different things in the house. And so I had been playing around with tahini for sesame flavor instead of like sesame oil or, sesame seeds themselves. And so I was using it for a bunch of different things. I made some like Mediterranean beef bowls this week with hummus and falafel. But I wanted something a little bit different. And so I have been challenging myself. Chef Phillip, I'm just maybe like 10 days out from a vacation. And so I've really been challenging myself to clean out the pantry and the fridge and the freezer because I want to take my grocery budget with me for fun things. And so I, of course, I could eat for free at work as a chef, but I'm like really, really trying to get really creative with what I've got. So I cooked some ramen noodles, drained everything out, didn't use the seasoning packet, made sort of a peanut sauce, but like sesame instead, and then crushed peanuts. I had some kimchi hanging out, and I had some sirloin beef tips, and that's what it was. It was
nice.
That sounds very good.
So, yeah, it was great. So
yeah. So before we get into everything, for the viewers, you all know that I've been a big fan of yours, Chef Phillip, for a while. Like when I first got into restaurants and I first started doing menus, things like that, I would, look at the internet for inspiration. I would go around San Antonio because that's where I was at the time. And for some reason, like some of your dishes came up and I thought, I got to check this out. What's going on? And so I started, like really just following y'all like on social media, things like that. And the things that you put out in L Ideas is just out of this world. So it's always been like an inspiration. So to have you on for me, it's really awesome. And I'm very excited today, by the way. So yeah, nice to finally meet you.
Steven's totally freaking
honored,
out.
Yeah. I'm totally honored.
I'm struck right now. I never get that way.
Seriously humbled.
I love it. I love it. I got to work with some folks way back in the early 2000s from that iteration of Le Cirque, and they were traveling and doing some events for St. Jude's. I think there was a partnership there. And I worked at the Tower Club in Dallas, and anytime I see that name, it means like big deal to me, among all the other, you know, stars that are in your banner, no doubt. But I always want to hear, like, it's such a big machine and a huge animal in the culinary world, and I always want to hear like what people's experiences were, what their takeaways were, like maybe what the most shocking things were, because it seems kind of like a circus. You know, it's in the name, but
exactly.
You know,
I mean, Le Cirque was really where I cut my culinary teeth in New York. I was struggling as a young cook right out of the Culinary Institute in '91. And I was lucky enough to get myself into the doors of Lafayette restaurant, where Jean-Georges was a chef right before he opened his first restaurant.
Yeah.
And lasted there for not too long. I wound up getting fired, and then went to the Quilted Draft, which was basically right next door. Lasted about a year there, and then wound up getting let go from there too. Went to Oceana when it first opened in New York City. Worked there for a bunch of months and wound up getting fired from there too. And then I went to another restaurant. I got fired from there. You know, I'm a young cook from Milwaukee, just right out of the CIA, and I thought I was much better than I actually was.
We all do that right out of school, don't we?
Exactly.
We're all like, yeah, I'm the executive chef now, bow to me. And it's like, no, you have a degree. Like,
right, exactly. It's not like other, like when you graduate as a doctor or something. But from there, I wound up leaving culinary world for a little while, and I got into wine sales. And I was just kind of wasn't sure if maybe I made a bad choice about becoming a chef. And while I was working there, I got a call from Chef Sotakun from Le Cirque, and he said that Daniel was just leaving to open up his first restaurant, and Daniel Balud, that is. And I wound up going there, and it really, I think I had gained enough experience by that point to have succeeded. But then again, I was also at this point like, this is the last opportunity I'm going to have, you know, to make something work, and it just fit my personality. I feel like I'm kind of a circus inside, so it just worked. And I still stay in touch with the chef to this day.
Awesome. I love that. I think one of the most career defining moments for me was getting fired in a text message. Like, really thought that one was pretty amazing. But it's honestly, it's not how many times you get knocked down, right? The old speech from Rocky. It's how hard you get hit and then getting back up, right? So, I think it's
taught me how to fight. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting. It's like once you find the place that you care about and you figure out the thing that clicks and the personal connection you have, and it kind of like makes it click in your head, then that becomes the place that's like, okay, like, I'm not going to let this one beat me. And then you just build off those experiences. Like, I think we all have to be a little bit cracked to be in this business, and we thrive on that, like that intense chaos, and it's like learning how to harness it, So
that is actually a great way of phrasing it. And I feel like it's taken a career to do that, like, for sure. I mean, Le Cirque was a jungle, like if working with cooks and watching them break down and cry next to you on the line, or getting plates thrown at me. And, like, you either you learn how to fight and become a defensive jerk, or you perish. It's a very cutthroat place. And again, like, I just feel extremely fortunate to have been able to have thrived in that environment.
That's amazing. Yeah. So from being from Milwaukee, I want to know, like, what did you grow up cooking, and who inspired you to become a chef?
Yeah, I never really, as a matter of fact, not only was I not into cooking as a kid, I didn't even like eating pretty much most ingredients. And I wound up, getting into a lot of trouble during high school and not being focused, and wound up going to graduating from high school and needing a job. And I wound up getting a job in a local Milwaukee diner, and some guys there were telling me that, like, you can make good living as a chef. And I was like really gullible, and I'm like, okay, let's give it a shot. And a lot of beat downs right from the beginning, and but the key was getting out of Milwaukee and going to the Culinary Institute.
Wow.
I have to laugh. Like nobody I know got into this for the money. The money comes,
Right.
but
I know.
not easy, not quickly.
No, not for a lot of people, never at all. I mean, that's just the truth of it, But I think getting out of Milwaukee and seeing, starting to see seeing that there was a world outside of there where, I could start fresh, I think was a very real splash of cold water and woke me up.
Nice. Love that.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, let's see, L Ideas has been around for how long now?
We've 14 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I know it's hard to believe.
Right. So what took you to Chicago? I guess from New York, and it sounds like you've been kind of all over the place. What got you to Chicago?
Yeah, I'll give you the quick 5-minute world tour, if you would. I left New York. I went to Europe after that. Spent about 6 months traveling and cooking with Jacques Maximin in the south of France. Also spent a little time working in Holland. From there, I came to Chicago for the first time in '99 and stayed for about 2 years. And then I was working as a chef of a restaurant called Bistro Margot. And then from there, I already had like the traveling bug in me. And after September 11th, I was like, I just want to go. So I went to Brazil, spent about 6 months living and working in Brazil. And then from there, I decided I just didn't want to come back to the States yet necessarily. But I wound up going to Hawaii and living on Maui for a couple of years. And then from there, my brother was getting married. He was living in Israel. So when I went for his wedding and just decided to stay there and spent a couple of years there. From there, I went to Bermuda for about a year.
Just being really, like, well, I'm here. We'll just stay. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just like, oh my God, that's crazy.
Maybe the first time was frightening, but once you do it and you kind of you realize you're going to be okay, and you're going to, I didn't have children at the time. Wasn't responsible for anyone but myself. And, the road tends to open up for you when you're willing to go out there, I think, a little bit and freewheel it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then from Bermuda, I wound up in Chicago, and I got a really good job as a chef of Lockwood Restaurant at the Palmer House. So kind of springboarded that into getting a little bit of a reputation here in Chicago. So when it came time when I left the hotel, I was behind a food truck movement here in Chicago because our laws were really archaic. So I launched a food truck very inappropriately called the Meaty Balls Mobile. And that's how I found the restaurant. I was using the kitchen of the L Ideas as a commissary for that. Mm-hmm. And that's how I got into the kitchen.
How did that relationship come about, if you don't mind me asking? Like, did you know somebody that already owned the building, or was it both your space and the truck, or like how did that happen?
Sure. One of my former sous chefs from Lockwood had just opened up a restaurant in Chicago, and he heard, that I had left the hotel and was looking for a kitchen when we had spoken, and he knew of somebody who was running a catering operation out of the location. When I went in to see it, it's hard to believe, but there was like rain literally falling down from the ceiling as I came in, and like the guy, he had several restaurants and they had all blown up, and all he was left with was this catering operation that he was doing. It wasn't making him money, and I think in conjunction with that, he just wanted out. So he's like, if you just buy the fixtures and see if you want to run my business, I want out. And it was just kind of like,
sounds like
a no-brainer. So I ran the both for a little while, and then when I was oddly enough, so I was really into the meatball concept, and as I was getting the kitchen turned into my business's name for the business license, I was getting the routine health inspection with that. And when the health inspector was done doing the rounds, food trucks were really new in Chicago, and she wasn't
Yeah.
sure what kind of a license to give me. So she's like, well, you've got this area over here where you could seat people, so I'm going to give you a restaurant license. Literally, it was like a bolt of lightning just coursed through me.
That's
I was like,
probably the best thing that could have happened to you. Food trucks are
Right.
so phenomenally hard to get into any city. Like they're like, if you take the wheels off, it's a permanent structure. If you leave the wheels on, but you're in park, it's such and such, blah blah blah, and it is a pain. Like it is a pain.
I put it in the top 3 of the best things to ever come out of a health inspection. Top 3.
I love it. I love it.
So then you open L Ideas, or you work on it, and what was the inspiration at the time? Like, were you just getting like a little bit of everything from your background put into one, or what influenced you and your menu?
Great question. When I first had the idea, I literally just thought it was going to be like a stipend to the food truck business, and I would do like a little dinner with like I brought my dining room table.
Yeah.
I brought my dining room table from home, and I was going to just do 6 people at once. And then as it started to, I remember talking to a chef by the name of Andrew Brochu, who I believe is now down in Georgia running a restaurant. And he said that he had just, the restaurant that he was working at just closed, and we talked about getting, the idea of maybe, why don't you come in and work with me, and the 2 of us will do something. And as soon as he said yes to that, I knew immediately we had, like, this was going to be a serious restaurant now.
Yeah.
So it more importantly, it really set us off on a collaboration. And I think that that's what the basis of our food at L is about. It's a collaboration. It's not just my cooking and my ideas. It's also the chefs that I work with, and now I only work with one chef.
Gotcha.
That's so amazing. I just wanted to ask.
We do whatever we want to do. We don't have any
Right.
We change it however we want to change it. There are no rules. There really are only not to repeat only not to repeat ingredients is pretty much our only rule.
Wow.
I always wonder like how you would keep that organized. And I think, this podcast is for like chefs to listen to, and then also like home cooks and people who are like, we say we're for everybody, right? The flavor curious, the foodies, the amateur, everything else, right? And I always want to try to explain to people how we keep those things organized. I used to keep a calendar of things I would do, and then I would like search in the calendar, and if any terms came up, I would be like, oh, we already did. We did skate wings, right? Like,
Yeah.
So,
well, I don't think it's so much like repeating. Well, I don't want to repeat dishes, but in one menu, I don't want to repeat ingredients mostly.
Yeah. Or like flavor profiles or stuff like that.
Exactly. But, I've learned to kind of thrive on that chaos. While I understand, like, I think when I learned, it was all about like writing it out. Like after I would finish a day working at Le Cirque, I would go in the office and just kind of create menus, and looking back on them now, they were all just like Le Cirque cooking and, some Alain Ducasse, inspired, there's people who inspired me. And you did that long enough, and you think about putting food together long enough, and then all of a sudden you don't need any more writing it out. You just kind of trust the process. I think a lot of times like a musician would, but I don't even test my dishes out anymore.
Right.
Yeah. I just like going with it now, and no more prep. I don't do prep lists anymore. I just go downstairs and start doing, and just believe I'll know. It helps to live here, because if I got a lot of work to do, I just go down there early. But it's mostly about having your state of mind in the right place, and you knowing yourself and your strengths and weaknesses, because you can overthink things too.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
over organize. You don't let that flow come in. I think natural.
It takes all the fun out of it. Insert word here, but all the fun, all the love, all the passion. Like if it's too rigid, if it's too regimented, it kind of just takes all that feeling out of it. you know?
It's an interesting point. I like that. I don't know if it takes the feeling out of it, but I think it just adds a level of intensity, and it's not as relaxed. You know, I think there's like I've seen so many incredible chefs doing just like food that like heads and shoulders above anybody else, and but it's all they're about. You know, it's like, and everybody around them is buying into that as if, you know, you're a cult leader, and everybody else, you know, and that's the way you got to run your restaurant in a lot of ways. You know, especially if it's a big organization, it has to be more along the lines of dictatorship.
Yeah. Well, I think that, you know, they can certainly become cults of personality, right? Like it's, you really have to get that buy-in depending on what you're trying to do. You know, but
True.
I think if you find the right people, they'll be dedicated for the right reasons, and maybe it doesn't have to be that way. Maybe there's no gold statue of you, right, in the kitchen, like, you know.
True.
Yeah.
True. But one thing about what I've learned, like I ran a very loose ship when, you know, I had a lot of cooks working for me, and if you give them no parameters, it just becomes a pirate ship. And I really believe at the end of the day, most of us who go into this business are pirates at our core. You know, like it's just the nature of the beast, I think.
Yeah.
So what motivated you? Oh, go ahead.
No, please.
I was gonna say, so what motivated you to get like the Michelin star and all that? Because, you know, you were talking about like you had an actual restaurant and it was you and another chef and all that. Like, tell me about that.
Yeah, it really I had this idea like after the health inspection, and because there was nothing really to do to get it open, because most of the stuff was already there. I didn't need any investors, and we were able to open in like 6 weeks from the day it was conceived to the day we opened. And it was, and like the most amazing thing is like I felt like our first night serving, we served an outstanding product, you know. And like the one thing about our restaurant, I don't know if you've seen the layout of it, there's no walls.
Yep.
So guests are allowed to actually come up and come back to the kitchen. It wasn't like I thought about this, right? But at the same point, it just kind of happened, and we didn't stop it. But I'm getting a little off track here. What was the question again?
There's no track. How did the Michelin star, the journey to the Michelin star?
Right. So I saw that the business was going to be going in I saw that we were doing a really good job, and I just kind of felt like, wow, maybe there's some potential here. But it wasn't anything about like doing what Michelin wants us to do. It was just about, we're going to do what we want to do. And hopefully, you know, I think we had the pedigree, and certainly with Chef Brochu and I, the talent. But it took us a couple of years. Well, he left pretty soon, and then there was another couple of chefs who was with me when we actually got the star.
Gotcha.
Love it. I love it. So obviously there's all sort of media depictions out there for like this journey to earn the Michelin star, right? You have The Bear, you've got Burnt with Bradley Cooper. Like it's certainly been dramatized, but can you explain just a little bit for our listeners who maybe don't know like the significance of the Michelin star and kind of like the process and how you get one?
Yeah. Well, the process of how you get one, I think you really don't know when the Michelin inspectors are in your dining room.
Sure.
You know, so with that in mind, you just kind of have to, which kind of speaks to the consistency, that level that you need to have. You really aren't supposed to have bad nights or
ready all
bad
the time.
dishes. You know, you've got to really be just kind of aware that any given night, when you least expect it, you should expect
like the greatest mystery shop ever, like a mystery diner.
Basically like that. You know, and then when we got it, I felt like all of a sudden we were in the club. You know, I think you know, in a lot of ways, I think it must be how an actor feels when they receive an accolade from their peers, and you know, because it's such a noteworthy publication, and it's so widely
it's an incredible accomplishment
throughout the globe. Yeah.
So a moment ago you were talking about like you got no walls there, so you know the guests can come out and watch you all, things like that. I guess what's the overall experience that you want the guests to have?
Another good question. I want them. Our whole mission statement is just to kind of remove the stuffy and pretentious feeling that a lot of times can come with the dining experience, and just like we want to be like your everyday person fine dining. You know, where you don't like a lot of times I'll go out to a great restaurant and I'll sit in my chair and the food, everything's great, the service is good, but I'll feel so kind of like boxed in because like you're so there's a you know, weightiness to great service. You know, and I think some of the greatest restaurants try to remove that away through personality. But one thing that I wanted, like a meal that I had my high school graduation gift from my stepfather, he took me to the English room in the Pfister. And as a young cook, like there was just amazing, like there was tableside cooking and there was interaction. You were watching the flambés happen. And I remember I was just speaking with my wife Akiko about this, and I was telling her, you know, like that day I was like, I want to make people feel the way that I felt that night. You know, like that there was a show happening in front of you. This wasn't just dinner; it was a show and a performance. And I feel like I kind of backed into that at L Ideas in a way, you know.
So then, like, if someone were to go eat there, like clearly not the whole suit and tie attire, what's it? When people go, do they typically go like in shorts, or like is there?
No, I mean people usually get dressed up for a nice night out on the town. Occasionally we will get people in, you know, like very laid back and relaxed, but we don't turn them away. It's their choice. That, you know, like they're just coming for dinner. My job is to put it on the table for them, and awesome. You know, some of our best, longest lasting guests actually have been guests who came in really casual. Like there was one guy who wanted to watch like his football game on his phone while the dinner was going on. You know, but he came back like 20 times. You know, it's like, you know, like you don't never know who's who. You know, who's that person.
I feel like there's just a bit of a double metaphor there. He's physically breaking down walls and then breaking down people's walls, right? Like,
yeah, there you go.
It's really like playing out really nicely there. I want to ask. I know that the idea of experimental tasting, right? Like, there's a lot of boundaries that are being pushed, but is there anything that you will not do? Is there anything that you've said like this would be one step too far? I don't know if it's ever crossed your mind.
Well, I will say that one thing that I felt like it kind of goes back to the Michelin star, and like I was about happy about the Michelin star for one day, and then I wanted to push for 2 Michelin stars.
Yeah.
And it was really a little bit foolhardy, you know, and you know, and it's probably, I've done a lot of therapy, I think, to work out a lot of that inner stitch, if you would. But I wound up giving up microgreens. I was like, you know, I mean, like they were beautiful, and I think I gave up a little bit of the push for 2 stars. You know, all I want to do is make my food the best it can be.
Yeah.
But like I felt like the embellishments were just like lipstick on a pig. You know, and I kind of came to this conclusion that I could get, you know, if the food flavors speak for themselves, you know, like minimalist approach to it.
Right.
It doesn't need to be so dramatic and, you know, over the top to be beautiful.
Yeah. I completely agree.
I'll put something on if it has a direct purpose on a dish.
Yeah.
You know, but what I'm talking about is garnishing and, you know, for the sake of garnishing, you know, and having more tweezers. I'm tired of all the tweezers coming to the table, you know, like
I have to remember back, like, God, it takes me back 21 years ago. There was an acronym. I'll never forget it. The word P, planned, edible, and appropriate for garnishes.
Yeah.
and I think it stuck with me for a long time, but I've certainly worked in places where like, let's put this 75-cent edible purple orchid on every single plate. Well, like, why?
Right.
Like, first of all, it tastes like perfume. Secondly, it's not. Secondly, they're expensive. Third, like, no.
When I go out for Thai food, I will ask them to leave the tulip on the lily on the side. I don't need it. I don't just keep it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I can remember the chef that taught me how to cook when I was first taking over. He would tell me, no microgreens. Try to make it look even better without the microgreens. And I've tried to stick to that. Every now and then I'll try to do microgreens, but then I feel stuffy, And I try, I just don't do it anymore.
There are chefs who pull it off. Like, I don't want to make it sound like it can't be like we were just at doing a collaboration with a great restaurant called Carino here, a Mexican fine dining Michelin starred restaurant. I mean, their food was phenomenal, but I'm okay with doing what we're doing, and I don't need to push that envelope any further than I feel like we already have.
Nice. What are your next goals then? What does every day look like for you? You set out to be better than the day before, or like, what's the next big thing if it's not a second Michelin star? What's on the horizon?
I mean, honestly, I've just been working on my own psychology quite a bit lately, and just trying to be okay with, career goals. I want to keep Ideas running as long as I can. There have been ideas about expanding and doing other projects, but my feeling about it is to do anything else, I would need to remove myself from L, or I would stretch myself more thin than I already am.
Fair.
My goal, honestly, at this point is just to age well, and hopefully continue doing as well as we've been doing at the restaurant.
Yeah. I love it.
Push it and go as long as we can.
I think it's so important. I believe this is episode 107. I cannot keep up. In episode 99, Stephen and I had thank you so much. Yeah. Stephen and I had a candid conversation about mental health in our business, and how we think that the industry is taking a turn for the better, maybe even, from the outside looking in, or even from the inside looking out. But it just seems like there are less toxic and more stable places to work, but like, chefs have to take care of themselves. Like, there is an incredible amount of intense pressure that we put on ourselves before anybody else can put it on us. And even that chaos can eat you alive. And
we wear that pressure. Yeah, we wear that pressure as a badge of honor. And in it, we lose our vulnerability. And then we just fill ourselves with more pressure to kind of mask that vulnerability.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we're just not cool people anymore. It takes a pirate mentality to do this, to come up through the ranks and to succeed. And, it's hard to transform that, when was it, 2016, I started realizing, I was talking to my wife, and I'm like, I just don't enjoy doing this. I couldn't put on the persona to kind of get motivated to go into work. And with my cousin, the two of us kind of wrote a graphic novel together, trying to kind of unearth this inner torment, if you would,
Sure.
And I think like in 2019, I self-published it, and then I had a grand tour plan for it when COVID hit, and it just kind of just became this thing. But it really, in a lot of ways, was the impetus for realizing that something inside was wrong. And
well, thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate it. And also, can we get one? Like, where is it? Like,
I actually, I'm only got a few more left at the restaurant, and I haven't brought myself out to, around to just publishing another one. I feel it was almost kind of like this point in time that had its place and its purpose.
I
don't want to and it's done. You know, I felt like,
Yes,
I
it's
can't,
super
I can't
valid too.
believe.
Like,
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
probably that finality of like putting it to bed, maybe that helps.
I'll send one to each of you. So
Well, I remember
That'd be
during
awesome.
COVID, like on your social media, you were doing like a comic books, right, or something along those lines.
Yeah, well, that's what it was. It was a graphic novel, exactly.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
It started as a comic book, but then it just kind of morphed into more like, all right, this is going to be we even like were
Steven,
pitching
you
it to
just
networks.
called his action figure a toy. Sorry.
No, because like I said, I remember seeing that like on social, like on Instagram and stuff like that. So, you know, when you started talking about, you know, being a self-published author and things like that, I was like, well, wait a minute. So, you know, I wanted to ask about that because I remember reading them thinking, okay, this is pretty interesting, you know? I
kind of doubled it with a lot of writing that I did as a means of promotion for it. So I wrote a few articles, kind of where the idea came from, what's wrong with the inner beings and the nature of the business, and you know, had a grand tour, you know, basically along the lines of, hey guys, we need to start looking at ourselves, you know, and because you spend this life doing things for other people, right? Like I'm making everybody else's night wonderful, you know, and at the end of the day, you know, there's not much left for myself. So, you know, like, especially with the pandemic as an impetus, I decided to kind of like trim back, and it's just myself and one chef now. Like we're only doing it 4 nights a week. And
because you're 26 seats, right? Is that right?
We're 24 now. We've actually decreased our seating as well. You know, and in the process, I feel like I've gained a life. You know, having 3 days off instead of 1 or 2, you know, like allows my body to rest. I'm like 55 now. You know, the wear and tear of the physical aspect of it is way more than it was when I was in my 20s and 30s.
This is a thing that I tell people a lot. Like I get people all throughout my life, whether they're friends that I made along the way or family, and they're like, I don't want to cook for you. You're a chef. I'm like, you don't understand. Like I'm in the service industry. You could cook me a grilled cheese sandwich and it would make my heart grow 3 sizes because I didn't have to do it. And I'm getting to be served. Like nobody understands how special that is, no matter what it is. Right? Like
I say the same thing to people. Like it doesn't matter if it doesn't taste good. You're cooking for me. I'm grateful for you.
I don't have to eat this in my office or over a trash can.
No, it just feels good to be. It feels good to be cooked for, and it feels good that somebody's doing it. But you're right. Everybody's nervous about it, and you know, I guess I get that.
I'm like, please just do your best. If it's edible, I promise I will enjoy it.
So since you've you know, discovered, you know, like working on mental health, that's a big one. What would you say the environment is there in the kitchen there at L?
Just with you and the guy, or
I think it's important to understand. I think there's an arc to it from where it was to where it is now. I was going through a really bad divorce from my children's mom. At the very week we opened was the week that I left home. And we became a very big, lot of libations. Guests would come back, do shots with us. And, you know, a few years into it, I was developing a real problem. Like there was one night where we decided to do 1 shot per course. And, you know, we have a 13-course menu. And I was like, I was babbling the dessert course. And I think my front of the house manager, Bill Talbot, looked at me. He's like, Chef, you know, you just can't go on. And I think I just used that as kind of an impetus. And, you know, in talking with my wife and the realization that you only get 1 liver, you can get, you know, like a lot of transplants, but liver, once you destroy it, you're done. And, you know, a couple of my former chefs wound up dying, one from drugs, one from alcohol. And, you know, it sobered me up to the point where and the restaurant became so toxic, you know, like I wasn't managing anyone. I was just like wanting to be everybody's friend and buddy and party mate. and it all caught up. And
you were like leading the mutiny, it sounds like.
Exactly. I was asking for mutiny basically, and when it came, I didn't know what to do with it. And but since then, I've slowly been taking it back, and like it's we would have a drink after service. I didn't go sober, but I definitely removed a big aspect of the hard liquor, and now I pretty much don't do it except for like once in a while. Where I'll have a shot. But like the restaurants, my sous chef Al Cuevas is in recovery, and I just love working at my restaurant way more than I actually ever have from the inside. My ego always enjoyed it, but now I feel like a deeper part of me appreciates it way more than I ever have.
That's incredible. Thank you for being so vulnerable today. I know you were like, we were just going to talk about food. Oops.
That's the goal.
Yeah. The food is made by people, and the people are multifaceted. And it's like something that everybody has to remember. It's like a human being behind all the food, right?
Yep.
So where do you draw inspiration from? And when you are cooking, like, is there anything that really helps push that motivation? Like, for example, myself, when I'm cooking in the kitchen, I'm listening to music, things like that, stuff that puts me in a good mood. Is there anything that you do in particular?
Really nothing in particular. When I want to come up with a new dish, it formulates over a while. Like there's a part of my mind that's always kind of working on new dishes and getting, so once the idea comes together pretty much in my mind, it's just kind of like a go. And I'll usually go down into the kitchen. I live right upstairs from the restaurant, so I just walk down, and on those days when I'm doing a new dish, I'll just give myself extra time to let it come out. And that's the fun part, is bringing a dish to life, like for the first time, and trying to work out the intricacies of it when you've got guests coming that night for dinner. It's thrilling, and it surprises a lot of our guests to hear that there's it's that kind of a gut shot cuisine, but at the same point, I tell them, like, people are spending a lot of money, $250 a person. They're paying all their money up front to come onto our dead end street in kind of like a dilapidated part of Chicago.
Right.
There's an adventuresome spirit that they have to come dine with us. So I like to just meet that in the middle and have that same kind of a spirit. But I meditate a lot when I'm not working. And I feel that that's helped my creative process a tremendous amount too.
Yeah, kind of. Meditation requires a ton of focus, no doubt, but there's also an aspect to it of like turning your brain off. And I think that chefs have a little bit of a busy brain. I don't think anybody would be really good at it if they couldn't, like compartmentalize and building all the information, and you've got a tape playing in the back, and there's 500 things to multitask. And I think kind of like letting it rest and honing in, no doubt, it must help your process. And I love that.
Yeah, a lot of it, I think, is about, I've learned that it's so much about actually just letting go of the tendency to think, to overthink, and my mind is like a gerbil, just going down any kind of a hole it can go down. And while many of those are dead end and can be really frustrating for me, like every now and then you go down something, you're like, oh my gosh, look at this idea, or this thought. And like you realize that we get into our own way, way more than we think, in our consciousness.
Yeah, you're just getting stuck in your own head. It stifles creativity, and it kind of like hurts self-esteem quite a bit too. Like the lies we tell ourselves, or kind of the issues that we create that aren't really there.
Yeah. I think it's all rooted in deep fear. I just feel like our relationship with fear is a lot of what needs to be examined. At least for me, it was. I think I was afraid of how I would look, or how in a certain kind of a situation, or what people would think about me. What if Michelin decides to take away my star? there's so many fears that I fight against every day, professionally and personally, and just learning how to reframe some of that a little bit, and has been positive.
That's incredible. I love that you have that awareness, and it takes some people like more than a lifetime to figure it out, and some people don't. What advice would you give to young folks who are heading into culinary school?
Stay in school.
Sure.
Get a degree. I'm
Sure.
really a big advocate of getting a degree. There's plenty of great chefs I know that became great chefs after they got a degree first. But in general, I think it's really a commitment to the craft that is needed. You're not going to get better if you don't get challenged. And I do believe that. I think as chefs, I think we're notorious for being ruthless about how we challenge you. And, but at the same point, you just don't get better without struggle,
Right.
So, I think the best advice was just stick with the struggle, embrace the struggle, not just stick with it, but embrace it. Because that's what'll get you there at the end of the day.
Yeah. The struggle is not even I don't know. I would like to tell people like the daily in and out struggle is not even the hardest things you'll deal with. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of like the part of the growing pains. So
yeah. Well, what does the future of food look like to you?
Good question. Yeah,
loaded question.
I like that one too. The future of food. I think, I don't know if we're going to have another revolution like we did with Ferran Adria, like in my lifetime, or what that will look like. I do believe it's going to be more of a simplification in regards to, I think there's some great three great restaurants that have popped up here in the last maybe 5 years, or maybe a little bit more than that, is Kasama, which is a Filipino-based restaurant. Then you've got Indian, which is doing an Indian inspired cuisine. And then, like I mentioned before, Carino. These are three, really new upstart restaurants that are employing like modern techniques with authentic flavors from the region. And, it gets people and things like that, where you're taking a known cuisine and just like putting it in the stratosphere. I hope there are more restaurants coming like that.
Me too. As much as I love like the haute cuisines of the world and the French inspired and all the classics and all the plays on the classics, like I love to see something that is ethnic and certainly like foreign to people, but in more than one way, right? Not just location. Like I love to see that stuff shine and come to the forefront, and what is every day to some people become like a really spectacular and extraordinary, like destination type dining,
Yeah,
exactly.
It's really cool.
Very good. Well put.
I try.
So
the last few guests that we've had on, we're all in different parts of the country. This is kind of my squirrel question, but like, what is barbecue to you? Texas barbecue. Melissa's in North Carolina. That's a different style of barbecue.
I'm from Texas, but I'm a traitor to Texas barbecue.
Well, yeah.
So, I like mustard.
That's a great question. I mean, we actually did a barbecue restaurant during the pandemic. For takeout. I would not. We were more faux-BQ than we were like fall-BQ at the AUX.
Yeah.
Because I had a technique that managed to make it seem like I was slaving over the smoker all day, which I kind of was, but I had a technique. Real barbecue to me, I love St. Louis ribs. I don't know. Anybody who's trying to do it well, you can tell when somebody really cares about it. And I like my sauces to have a lot of vinegar snap to it.
Same.
That's kind of a key to me. It's got to have a right spice. Like it's got to have an equal balance of like a spice and acidity, and with nuances of sweetness. What I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And then smoke. Like you just gotta, like the tenderness.
Yep.
Where it's from isn't as important to me as who's doing it.
Yeah, and if they're doing it well, for sure. And I always like to ask other chefs, what is it that, and this is interesting because you don't have like a commute to speak of, right? Like I always ask other chefs, what are you cooking when you get home? It says
I don't.
A 12-hour, none.
Never.
So these are your epic food crawls across the city where you're staying acquainted with the new,
And I go to bed early now, so like when I get home,
isn't it great?
Really like it really is. I really do. I feel those late nights, we're not meant to be up that late. But like I'll make some toasts for myself every now and then. But I have this thing. Like one of the things I think in this realization that I wasn't finding myself enjoying cooking anymore was I was cooking for my kids a lot. I was like I needed to kind of refine my relationship with food again. And now I do it. I cook professionally for my guests, and then I let other people cook for me when I'm not cooking for other people.
That's awesome. That's the dream, right? Like I think.
Yeah, I pinch myself. I don't know how this all happened. I really don't.
It was a lot of hard work, and you deserve it. Man, well, Philip, where can folks find? Is it just going to be the website for the restaurant about what's going on with you? Do you consider yourself having like a presence on social media? How can people keep up? Do you want to be kept up with?
I'm really just fine. To be honest, I'd love for people to come in and see us at L Ideas. Like I really have kind of blanked and spaced on social media over the last couple of years, especially. I'm sure we're losing out on some guests by me not being on social media, but I kind of like people finding us and discovering us on their own. And
I love it.
Like it
seems a little less contrived, I think. You're not chasing people's affections.
That's how I found
it.
Doing homework.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it
so much.
I want to say like the last few times I've been to Chicago, I've always wanted to go to your restaurant, right? But I know you got to make reservations, pretty far in advance. But then we've gone for like Chicago Open Air, Riot Fest, things like that. So then it's like we don't really have time. So
well, we're right down the block from Riot Fest, just for the record.
Serious?
Yeah, we're right there.
Steven, you screwed the pooch.
You got my email. Just shoot me an email. We'll get you.
Nice. The last time I was in Chicago was for work. It was a quick in and out, and it was 7 closing shifts in a row, and inventory was just supporting another location. I was like, dang, I get to do anything, and I get to go anywhere. It was awful. Nice. Yeah, I was like, hotel and work. I was like, okay. Admittedly, I grew up, hungering after, why am I blanking on his name? PBS guy that cooks Mexican food, Toplobampo.
Oh, Rick Bayless.
Yes. I was like, Rick, it's a Rick. I know it is. And I was going to say Rick Steves. It's like, no, that's the traveling guy. So I did one of those crawls once through Chicago, but I look forward to coming back, and I'm definitely going to hit it up. So
look forward to seeing you guys in person.
Yeah. Stick around right after we get done. All righty. Thank you so much to everybody for listening. And thank you so much for making the time for us today, Chef. We really appreciate it. You're super amazing. Nobody really has to tell you that, I'm sure. Please keep crushing it. You inspire both of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much. Really grateful.
Take care.
Take care.